Alright, Fire Emblem 12, Hard 3, 0% growth, Chapter 19, the final battle, or the last decisive battle in another translation. And that's pretty accurate, honestly. But before we get into that, I actually took the time to read some of these support conversations. Zane's is a little dumb because the monocle isn't even on the right eye. I don't think the avatar should be fooled by this half-assed attempt. Beck tries to give an in-universe explanation for not having moving ballista in this game. You need the oil from some fruit that magically disappeared after Shadow Dragon. It's silly, but I appreciate the effort. This one with Sirius is amazing, though. Chris super doesn't trust him, and of course doesn't realize he's talking hard shit to the most accomplished soldier in all of Arcanea. And so Sirius just fucking KOs it, dude. Just drops him to the mat like a boss, because he's being such a dick. I love this so much, in contrast to like the entire rest of the roster just fawning over the self-insert. And then Yumina's being tsundere, and Marth talks about some bullshit nobody cares about. So that was a fun little upbeat preamble to the worst chapter I've ever played in Fire Emblem. It's going to be a two-parter, like Chapter 14, so there's plenty of time to go over the details after the preparations. But for now, I want to point out that I went ahead with my idea to use Astrum reclassed to Horseman rather than Beck, even though I've grown surprisingly fond of Beck after expecting him to be a permanent benchwarmer. And Abel is taking over for Sirius as the Ballista Soaker due to his higher HP and defense. Abel's luck was too high to use the 2% crit rule in Chapter 18, but now that the Ballista have higher crit, he works just fine. The rest of the deployment is about what you'd expect, save for maybe the Avatar. I need another Archer for killing Draco Knights, and like I said in Chapter 18, I need to build his support with Katarina, so there you go. Finally, we have a very light Forge, plus 2 might on my Killer Axe, and I don't even need to tell you the name of this one, you already know who this is. Now I need to make sure that this Ballista rolls 39 might rather than 40, so that it can't one-shot Etzel. I finally used this defense bond from Marth and Sita's support conversations way back when to push Katarina past a couple survival thresholds while she's Nosferatu tanking, as well as an arm scroll for an extra point of damage and therefore healing from Nosferatu. And I finally get to use Io's shield for something. Let's get started. The reason this chapter is such a nightmare is the recruitment of 4 new characters combined with the most disgusting reinforcements I have ever seen. The recruitment must be done sequentially, with each character recruiting the next, and it starts with Marth visiting a village in the bottom right across the mountains. This presents a significant challenge for the player without the warp staff. It's a pretty long walk that includes fighting a pack of 6 linked paladins while you're passing through a ballista's range, and racing against 2 thieves who are rushing to destroy the village, and the village is guarded by 4 warriors that will double and therefore 1-round KO any flyers we might send to deal with the thieves. Putting it all together, the only possible solution for me is to one-shot them with Hawkeye. Fortunately, the first 2 can be pulled individually while we wait for Zane to catch up to help us with the last 2 on turn 3, and the Life Sphere is going to keep Minerva healthy. The rest of my army is just being careful to avoid all the ballista as they make their way up to the first pack of paladins. The only reason this chapter is possible in this run is because Intelligent made one critical error. They gave me an arena. If a unit visits the arena and checks the wager, they can decline and leave the arena without using up their turn. But because Intelligent wanted to give the player some agency, if you revisit the arena again, the wager will have changed. But that means the RNG has changed in some way. Combined with save states, the player now has access to unlimited RNG manipulation on player phase, meaning I can crit as much as I want on player phase. And of course the Geosphere is going to help facilitate that process at every turn. The way I've edited the video is to show a single visit to the arena when I do this, but in most cases it was several or even many visits to the arena to keep the RNG moving until I got what I needed. It will hopefully be clear as we go that I use this power very responsibly, going to great lengths to minimize the number of crits as much as I can, but sometimes there's just no avoiding it. Katarina looks like she's about to pull, but that tile is just one of the thieves. She's still 1 tile away from pulling the paladins. I really dislike chapters that start this way, where it takes 3 or 4 turns just to reach the enemies. It just widens the already large gap between high and low movement units. Shadow Dragon does that a lot. Anyway, Zane finds a crit for Minerva and Hawkeye. Beautiful. Abel sets up a trade chain, as well as providing the Geosphere for Zane. Who then gets what he needs and drops the last warrior after finding a crit with the arena. Now, the second recruitable unit is named Violent, and he appears along with 5 paladins back at the start point at the beginning of the enemy phase after you either visit the village or kill one of these thieves. So it's not like we can just kill these thieves and start chilling. Therefore, to get as much time as possible, I'm going to chip one of these thieves right now in player phase, and this type of village-seeking thief will only attack a unit standing on the village. So we put Pala there with her Silver Lance, and the thief is going to suicide into her on enemy phase. But because Violent can only show up at the beginning of enemy phase, that gives us another extra turn, rather than if I had killed the thief on this turn, Violent would appear right away. And be careful where you position Minerva. The Paladins can pull right next to where the flyers are here. Katarina is going to pull the Paladins now, so Abel heads off to provide the Geosphere, and to soak the Ballista at the edge of its range here on this forest tile. Katarina needs 1 crit on the first Paladin, and Minerva finds the RNG for her and then hands off the Star Sphere. Abel dodges the Ballista, but with the Life Sphere in hand, it doesn't really matter. Katarina needs to crit the first one because it's the only way to get chip damage on a second Silver Lance Paladin. They're not able to get to her at 1 range on the forest tiles, and the defense bond is what allows her to fight these 3 Paladins in a row without critting. These Paladins are very tough, but that sort of works in my favor in one sense, because Nosferatu doesn't put them low enough for the enemy Bishop to use Fortify. You may have noticed that Katarina could have moved 1 tile further to the right along the forest tiles, but by bringing the Paladins further to the left, we'll be able to circle around the right of them without reaching the Horseman's range, and so I went ahead and showed that with the red tiles. Let's get to work here. We're going to start with a Mercurius crit. And this probably wouldn't be necessary, except that Fina needs to waste her turn dancing for Marth, and I'll explain why in a minute. This positioning was really tricky to figure out. We need to open a path for Marth to run through and get him danced, but my whole army is in range of the Ballista now, and it will always prioritize getting a kill no matter how low somebody's luck is. Etzel is tanky enough to survive, which means it's going to go after Yumina, the Avatar, or Fina. And so for that reason, I made sure to get those 3 units on the forest tiles here to help me find a dodge with the arena. And this feels bad, but the Ballista just covers too many tiles here. It is simply not possible to get a 6-move unit from one side to the other without being shot at. This had to be done. I'm sorry. So Abel's going to find that random number for us and finish off the last Paladin with a completely unnecessary crit because, of course, the game gave me a crit I didn't want after going to the trouble of chunking it down with Aura. So now Violin shows up with 5 Paladins. It's only 3 below hard 3, but it's going to get a whole lot worse than that. Yumina dodges, and we have a couple turns now to take a deep breath before the nightmare begins. Marth recruits the first of the 4 units, a dinky little Paladin named Roche here, and everyone else is just getting set up. Yumina's Fortify looks a little wasteful here, but remember it's also healing Pala off-screen, and 1 Fortify is more gold efficient than 2 Physics. Yumina still isn't past the Ballista's range though, so she needs help from Fina. Now here's what's going to happen. On the second enemy phase, after Violent appears, 8 reinforcements appear from the forts around the castle at the top left, and 4 Draco Knights spawn in each of the other 3 corners, for a total of 20 reinforcements on one enemy phase, plus the 5 Paladins with Violent makes 25 units, all rushing towards you at the same time. It is going to be completely insane, and that's why I'm not trying to meet up with Violent right now or pushing up into the next pack of cavalry. All we can do is form up and wait for the storm to come to us. Since 4 Draco Knights are about to spawn at the bottom right, Marth needs to already be leaving the village at the start of this turn, which is why Fina needed to dance him earlier. He actually still isn't out of range of the Draco Knights and needs another dance. Fortunately, there's enough safe space here in the pocket to stash your vulnerable units. Katarina is going to fight the Draco Knights from the top right, and Zane from the bottom right, while Violence Paladins and the bottom left Draco Knights won't quite be able to reach us yet. Watch out for the Ballista's range on that Forest Tile, and I need to get these swords back off of Astrum. He didn't end up needing them on that first pack of Paladins. Abel's going to continue soaking the Ballista to keep Katarina safe, while also giving her the Geosphere buff, and it's time to pull the trigger. Eight, 4, 4, 4. Just look at this shit. I need Katarina to crit 2 of her 4, and not entirely because I'd be overwhelmed otherwise, but more because I just can't fit enough killers up in that area on player phase without pulling the pack of horsemen, and I am not ready for that. Zane doesn't need to crit any of his though. It's worth noting that Violin's stats are so low that any unit who does not get doubled by the other Paladins is guaranteed to double Violent, so Nosferatu tanking that group of Paladins really isn't an option. Katarina would immediately kill Violent. I sped up the movement for a second there while I was playing because it was taking too long. Let's be honest, this looks pretty impossible, but intelligent systems cannot beat me, so I hope you'll tune into part 2 for the exciting continuation. Thanks for watching.